Happy Mother's Day. I pray that today that you ladies would have a wonderful day today, and that if you have an opportunity to visit with your mom, I pray that you would do that. I pray that all the ladies have been taken care of. Our normal routine at Hayes Baptist Church would be to give our mothers a present, but we're not meeting in person yet. But never fear, never fear. When we get back together, we're going to make all those things back like they used to be, and carry on our Hayes Baptist Church traditions. And so today I want to wish every single mother a happy Mother's Day. And if you're not able to be with your mother today because she's passed on, I pray that today you would just have good memories of her, and that you would remember the funny stories and the good times and all those sorts of things, and dwell on the investment that your mom made in you. And so today we're going to continue in our study of Ruth, but we're actually going to be looking at three women today. We're going to look at Naomi, we're going to look at Opha, and we're going to look at Ruth, of course. And so we're going to look at those three women, and we're going to look at different aspects, different parts of their lives. In the first chapter alone, we get to see a lot about these women and how they live their lives. And so hopefully today you'll be encouraged by some of the things that you hear. You'll be challenged by some of the things that you hear, and you'll want to maybe avoid some of the things, the decisions that some of these ladies made. And so today I pray that it would minister to you on Mother's Day, and that you would be encouraged to be a godly woman, a godly wife, and a godly mother. And so we look in Ruth as we're going along, and as the Lord would have it, we're going to look at three different women and their different aspects of their lives. And so it says this in verse 1. Now it came about in the days when the judges, sorry about that. Let me do that again. There we go. See if it'll work. There we go. Now it came about in the days when the judges governed, that there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem in Judah went to sojourn in the land of Moab, and his wife and his two sons. The name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife Naomi, and the names of his two sons were Mahlon and Chilion, Ephraimites of Bethlehem in Judah. Now they entered the land of Moab and remained there. Then Elimelech, Naomi's wife, died, and she was left with her two sons. They took for themselves Moabite women as wives. The name of the one was Orpha, and the name of the other was Ruth, and they lived there about 10 years. Then both Mahlon and Chilion also died, and the woman was bereaved of her two children and her husband. Then she arose with her daughter-in-laws, and she might return from the land of Moab, for she had heard that in the land of Moab that the Lord had visited his people in giving them food. So she departed from the place where she was, and her two daughter-in-laws with her, and they went on the way to return to the land of Judah. And Naomi said to her two daughters-in-law, Go, return each of you to her mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you, as you have dealt with the dead and with me. May the Lord grant that you will find rest in each of the house of her husband. Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. And they said to her, No, but we will surely return with you to your people. But Naomi said, Return, my daughter. Why should you go with me? Have I yet sons in my womb, that they may be your husbands? Return, my daughters. Go, for I am too old to have a husband. If I said I have hope, if I should even have a husband tonight and also bear sons, would you therefore wait until they were grown? Would you therefore refrain from marrying? No, my daughters, for it is harder for me than for you. For the hand of the Lord has gone forth against me. And when they lifted up their voices and wept again, and Orpha and kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. Then she said, Behold, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and her gods. Return after your sister-in-law. But Ruth said, Do not urge me to leave you or turn back from following you. For where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. Thus may the Lord do to me, and worse, if anything but death departs you and me. And when she saw that she was determined to go with her, she said no more to her. So they both went until they came to Bethlehem. And when they had come to Bethlehem, all the city was stirred because of them. And the women said, "Is this Naomi?" Let's pray. Father, today we give you thanks and praise and glory and honor for who you are and how you work in our lives. And Father, today I pray that you would bless each and every mother who is tuned in. I pray, Father, that you would allow them to have a great day. I pray that today, Father, that they would have good family time. And Father, that they would be encouraged today by the visits. I pray especially for those who have lost their mother recently, Father, and I pray that you would minister to them, that you would love on them, and that you would care for them, Father, because I know that today is a very hard day for many people. And so I pray, Father, that you would just minister to them, encourage them, and Father, that they might reflect upon the good things of their mother. And we would give you praise for all these things, for it's in the name of Jesus we pray. Amen. So as we look at these three ladies, the first one that we're going to look at is Naomi. And so what we find about Naomi is three things. This is not an exhaustive list. As you read through these scriptures, you may see some other things about these women that I'm not bringing out. It's not an exhaustive list by any means, but it's just some of the main things that I saw as I looked at these three ladies. And so I hope that as you read these scriptures, maybe the Lord will bring other things to you. And if he does, I pray that you just share that with me. Text me and let me know what God is showing you in his word. And so it says this in verse 1. It says, "Now it came about in the days when the judges governed, there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem in Judah went to sojourn in the land of Moab with his wife and his sons. The name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife Naomi, and the names of his two sons were Mahlon and Chilion, Ephraimites of Bethlehem and Judah. Now they entered the land of Moab and remained there." See, Naomi, she was an obedient wife. Now, we talked about the decision that Elimelech made last Sunday, and we talked about how he left because of what he saw, and we talked about how he left because of the physical things that were happening around him, and there was a famine, and he didn't wait on the Lord. He didn't even address the Lord. He didn't consult with the Lord. But we find Naomi, and she was an obedient wife. He decided that the family was going to get up and they were going to move to Moab. And so he packed up, and so she packed up her two sons and she went with him. She was an obedient wife. And today I pray that as you seek the Lord and as a woman of God, that you would be an obedient wife as well. That you would follow your husband, that you would see that he is following God, and that as he follows God, that you would be following his leadership. And so that's how God has designed man and woman. That's how he's designed the marriage. That's how he's designed how things are supposed to work, because our God is a God of order. And so we find out that she was an obedient wife. And I tell you today, there are women that need to learn about how to be obedient. And then we see in verse 8, it says, "And Naomi said to her two daughters-in-law, 'Go, return each of you to her mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me.'" Naomi was a loving mother. She just lost both of her sons, and here she has two daughters-in-law, and she wanted the very best for them. She wanted to make sure that they were taken care of, and she felt for them. She loved her sons, and she loved her daughters-in-law, and she wanted the very best for them. And I tell you, that's a dynamic that we must consider as anyone who is single today and is contemplating marriage. Be sure that you look at not only your spouse but their family as well, because you are marrying into a family. And so you may be a daughter-in-law or a son-in-law, or in the future you may be the father-in-law or the mother-in-law, or you may be a mom or dad. And so there's a lot of dynamics that go into families as our children get married. And so she was a loving mother. She loved her sons, and she loved her daughters-in-law, and she wanted the very best for them. And so she thought that at that point in time it would be best if they went back to their parents' homes, and so we see that she loved her daughters-in-law. Then we find this. It says, and then Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. They took for themselves Moabite women as wives. The name of the one was Orpah, and the name of the other Ruth. And they lived there about 10 years. Then both Mahlon and Chilion also died, and the woman was bereft of her 2 children and her husband. Naomi was a woman of sorrow. She had suffered great loss. I cannot imagine what it must feel like to lose a spouse. And then on top of that, not only did she lose a spouse, she lost both of her children. If you've ever experienced the loss of a child or the loss of a spouse, it is very sorrowful. It is very tough. It is very hard. I remember my mom, when my dad had passed, she told me, I called her one day, and they had been married for 64 years, by the way. And so she told me, she said that sometimes she would just turn and she would call my dad's name, and he's not there. And she asked me, she says, Gil, when do you think that I might stop doing that? And I told her, I said, Mom, you may never stop doing that, because they were married for 64 years. And it was a really tough time for her when my dad passed. And so we find that here she was, not only did she lose a spouse, but she lost both of her children, not just one, but both of them. And I cannot imagine what that must feel like. It's something that is so painful. It's something that is very difficult to work through. And so I always encourage folks at funerals, do not forget about the people who have lost loved ones, because there are days and there's months and there's even years that they will need help. And so here was Naomi, a woman of sorrow. Not only that, we see Orpah, and we find out this about her. It says, they took for themselves Moabite women as wives. The name of the one was Orpah, and the names of the other Ruth, and they lived there about 10 years. Orpah was a committed wife. And so I think that's one of the things that is so missing in our marriages today is commitment. When we start talking about marriage, you're making a vow to God and to your spouse, and God takes those vows very, very seriously. And so we need to see marriages that are committed. And here was Orpah, and she was a committed wife. She was married to him for 10 years. And so as we see this develop, we find out that she was committed to him until death do us part, just as the marriage vows say. When we take that marriage vow and we say, I will be with my spouse no matter what transpires, no matter what happens, it doesn't matter of anything that transpires. There's nothing that God can't heal. There's terrible things that can go on in a marriage, but God is capable of healing any of those things and solving any of those problems. And she was a committed wife. And so I think that today, in today's society, we find that, well, I can just get rid of my spouse and I can get another one. And we need committed people. We need to show that God has designed marriage and how he has designed marriage, and that it is a big commitment to be married. So we see that in Orpah. Not only that, it says this. It says, may the Lord grant that you may find rest, each in the house of her husband. Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept. And they lifted up their voices, in verse 14, and they lifted up their voices and wept again. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. She was a good daughter-in-law. By all indications, she wept with her mother-in-law. She said that she was going to go with her, and then later on, as Naomi talked to her daughters-in-law again, she decided to go back to her parents' house, to her mother's house. But she was a very good daughter-in-law, and she cared about Naomi. And so I just encourage you ladies today that if you're a daughter-in-law or you're a mother-in-law, that you should strive towards having a healthy relationship. And so Orpah did the best that she knew how to do, and she was a good daughter-in-law. And so I challenge you ladies today to to do the very best that you can in the role that God has placed you in. Not only that, we get to see this. And then she said, behold, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and her gods. Return after your sister-in-law. One thing that we see about Orpah that was probably not the best decision, but it was a decision that she made, and it says that she returned to her gods, and I purposely put in there a little g, because that is not the God that we serve. They served all kinds of other different kinds of gods, and that's a little g, because our God, the one true God, is supreme over all, and there are no other gods besides God. And so, but people make other things gods, and they shouldn't. And so she made a bad decision here in returning to her mother's house and returning to her gods. And so sometimes in life people make bad decisions, and here she is, and she made a bad decision, but we do see some good things about her. And then we turn our attention to Ruth. And this is what we see in verse 5. It says, then both Mahlon and Chilion also died, and the woman was bereft of her 2 children and her husband. Ruth was a widow at a young age. She had been married, and she already had become a widow at a young age. And it's really tough when you lose a spouse, no matter when that transpires in your life. But to lose one at a young age is incredibly tough. And so here she was. She had lost her husband. She's with her mother-in-law. She's going to travel with her mother-in-law. And we see that she became a widow at a young age. And so, the marriage vows are valid until death do us part. And so we will find out about Ruth as we continue our study in the book of Ruth, and we'll see what happens to her. But she did become a widow at a very young age, which is a very difficult thing to deal with. And then it says in verse 14, and they lifted up their voices and wept again, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. Ruth displayed great loyalty to her mother-in-law, and she was just clinging to her. I don't know if you've ever seen a child that is very attached to their parent, especially their mother, and it's like you go to pick that child up, and they want to just cling. They want to. I just picture that wrapping their little arms around their mom's leg, and that was the picture. She just clung to Naomi. Orpah kissed her and went on her way, but Ruth just stayed there, and she showed such great loyalty. And I tell you, that tells you a lot about the relationship with her and Naomi. And so, we ought to be loyal to our families. We ought to be loyal to our loved ones. And so certainly she was, and she showed great loyalty. And so we find also this in verse 15 through 18. It says this, and then she said, behold, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and her gods. Return after your sister-in-law. But Ruth said, do not urge me to leave you or turn back from following you. For where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. Thus may the Lord do to me, and worse, if anything but death parts you and me. When she saw that she was determined to go with her, she said no more to her. When we look at Ruth, we find out that she made a vow of commitment. Not only had she made vows about to her husband, and she had fulfilled those vows, but now she makes a vow to God and to Ruth and to Naomi, and it was a vow of commitment. And she said, I'm going to go, I'm going to follow you, I'm going to go where you go, I'm going to sleep where you sleep, I'm going to, your people are going to be my people, because she was a foreigner. And she says, your God will be my God. And it was a vow of commitment. Where you die, I will die. And she said, if anything other than death departs her and Naomi, then she said that the Lord could do whatever he wanted to her. And so we see this commitment this vow of commitment. And I tell you, it is, when I read about Ruth, it's encouraging to read about how much she loved her mother-in-law and how committed she was to her and how loyal she was to her, and that she was willing to make this vow and to keep this vow. And so when we look at these three ladies today, we see all kinds of characteristics about ladies. And some you might want to incorporate into your life. Others you definitely don't, like Orpha when she returned to her little gods. But overall, as we look at these three women, we see a lot of different aspects of life. We see a mother-in-law, we see a daughter-in-law, we see a wife. We see young widows and we see older widows. And so we see a whole bunch of different aspects today. And I pray today, ladies, that this message would be encouraging to you. I pray that today that it would challenge you. I pray that today that that you would get something out of it as you look at the lives of these women, and that you might incorporate one small piece of today's message into your life. I ask you this question today. That should say, who do you most identify with today? And you may identify with one of these ladies today. And I pray that today it would be encouraging to you. If you need anything at all, ladies, be sure to text me or call me at 337-884-7900. And again, happy Mother's Day.